Most men underestimate just how much women crave depth, not just physical closeness, not just the obvious forms of intimacy, but something far more layered. The truth is, there are positions, metaphorical as well as physical, that women beg for silently, positions that almost no man dares to take because they require courage, leadership, and vulnerability. This isn't about acrobatics in the bedroom or a set of techniques to impress her. It's about stepping into a form of presence that women secretly long for but rarely find. There is a subtle but crucial difference between control and leadership, and it is a difference that most men today have been trained not to see. Leadership is not about forcing your will on someone else, barking orders, or trying to dominate every moment. Real leadership is about holding steady in the storm, about creating a sense of direction that allows someone else to rest in the certainty that you know where you are going. Women crave this. They may not always articulate it, and they may even deny it when pressed, because the modern world tells them they should never need anyone to lead them. But the reality is that in moments of intimacy, in moments of love, they long to trust a man who can set the tone and take them somewhere emotionally, spiritually, physically, that they cannot take themselves. So many men hesitate to step into this role because they have been told that leadership is oppressive. They fear that if they are decisive, if they make a plan, if they initiate, they will be accused of overstepping. This fear paralyzes them. They default to passivity, to waiting for her to make the first move, to asking endless questions about what she wants. They think this is considerate, and to some extent it is, but over time it becomes a burden for her to always be the one steering. She does not want a passive man who sits back and waits for instructions. She wants someone who will take her hand and say, "Come with me, I have something in mind." This kind of leadership does not have to be grand or theatrical. It is in the small gestures, choosing the restaurant instead of shrugging and saying whatever you want, suggesting an adventure instead of waiting to see what happens, confidently initiating intimacy rather than waiting for some perfect moment of permission. When a man does this, he is not taking away her agency. On the contrary, he is offering her the freedom to let go of constant decision-making. For many women, especially those who spend their days working, managing and planning, this is an incredible relief. Leadership in this sense is not just logistical, but emotional. It is about setting the emotional climate of the relationship. If you are calm, steady, and sure of yourself, you create a space where she can soften, where she can be vulnerable without fear. If you are anxious, uncertain, and hesitant, she feels that too, and it makes it harder for her to trust you. A woman can only relax into your presence when she believes you know where you are going, not just in the moment, but in life. That is why purpose and vision are so attractive. A man who knows what he is building, who is moving towards something meaningful, naturally takes on the aura of a leader. Of course, leadership is risky. It opens you up to rejection. You might make a decision she disagrees with. You might lead in a direction she does not want to follow. That is why so many men avoid it, because it is safer to stay in the background and avoid the risk of failing. But this safety comes at a price. The price is respect, and ultimately the spark of desire. Women cannot deeply desire a man they cannot trust to lead. They may like him, they may even care for him, but they will not feel that magnetic pull toward him if he always defers to them. There is also temptation to confuse leadership with dominance for its own sake, to think that being forceful or controlling is what she really wants. That is a mistake. Leadership must be paired with attunement. It is not about dragging her somewhere against her will, but about reading her, knowing her, understanding what would delight her or challenge her in a way that makes her grow. Leadership without empathy becomes tyranny, but leadership with empathy becomes intoxicating. When you lead well, you give her a gift. You invite her into an experience where she does not have to guard herself, where she can surrender a little without fear. And that surrender is not weakness. It is the other side of polarity, the dance between masculine and feminine that allows intimacy to be electric. The modern man must rediscover this art of leadership, not the outdated caricature of the domineering patriarch, but the steady, confident presence of the man who knows where he is going and invites her along. This is what women are begging for, often silently, often without even realizing it themselves. It is not something you can fake, because true leadership comes from inner strength. You must do the work to know yourself, to become grounded, to be worthy of being followed. When you do, you will notice that she responds differently. She will relax, she will respect you more, and she will be drawn to you with a force that feels effortless, because you have stepped into the position she has been waiting for you to take. There is a particular kind of strength that women find irresistible, and it is not the loud, performative kind that tries to intimidate the world. It is the quiet, unshakable strength of a man who does not panic when faced with emotion, hers or his own. Most men are never taught how to handle female vulnerability. When she cries, when she is anxious, when she is angry or afraid, many men instinctively withdraw. Some try to fix the problem as quickly as possible, throwing solutions at her feelings, like sandbags against a flood. Others retreat into silence, disappearing emotionally because they cannot bear the intensity. But what women crave most in these moments is not a fix and not an escape. They crave a man who can stay. Staying is harder than it sounds. It requires you to resist the urge to shut down, to resist the pull of your own discomfort, and to remain present even when what you are witnessing feels messy or irrational. The truth is that women's emotions are not always neat. They will not always make sense to you. Sometimes her tears are not about you at all. Sometimes they are about everything all at once. The temptation will be to defend yourself, to explain, to rationalize, to get her back to a state where you feel comfortable again. But that rush to make it stop is not what she needs. What she needs is your grounded presence. This does not mean you have to sit silently and do nothing. Emotional courage is active. It means looking her in the eye and saying, with your presence, if not with your words, you are safe here. I am not going anywhere. You are not too much for me. These are the moments when a woman decides whether she can truly trust a man. She is showing you a side of herself that she does not show the world, the raw, unfiltered side. And she is unconsciously asking, can you hold this? When a man can hold space for a woman's emotions without flinching, something profound happens. She softens. The defenses she has to keep up in the outside world begin to fall. She feels that she can breathe around him, that she does not have to hide her vulnerability. And this is the beginning of deep intimacy, the kind that goes beyond attraction and touches on devotion. Of course, this is not about becoming her therapist or absorbing all of her pain as if it were your job to fix her. Emotional courage is not about losing yourself in her storms, but about remaining steady even as the storm passes over you. Think of it like being the rooted tree in the middle of the wind. You do not chase the wind. You do not fight it. You simply stand firm until it calms. Men who avoid these moments often do so because they fear being overwhelmed. They worry that if they let her cry, it will never stop, that if they open the door to her feelings, they will drown. This is why it is so important for a man to know his own emotional limits and to be anchored in himself. You cannot hold space for someone else if you are terrified of your own feelings. Learning to tolerate discomfort, to breathe through your own anxiety, is part of becoming the kind of man who can meet her where she is. Women are deeply attuned to whether a man can handle their full emotional expression. If they sense that he cannot, they will either suppress their emotions around him, which leads to distance and resentment, or they will seek someone else who can handle it. This is not about drama. It is about longing to be known. One of the most powerful things a man can do is to tell a woman, I see you. Not just the polished, composed version of her that she shows to the world, but the tired, messy, emotional, human version of her, and to see her without judgment. This does not mean you have to agree with every emotion she feels or indulge every reaction. It simply means you stay long enough for her to feel that she is not alone in her experience. This kind of emotional courage has a ripple effect. When she feels safe enough to fully express herself, her body relaxes, her nervous system calms, and her love for you deepens. The bond becomes stronger because she knows she can be all of herself in your presence, not just the easy, happy parts. And here is the part most men miss. Emotional courage does not make you weaker in her eyes. It does the opposite. A man who can stay grounded when she is falling apart appears stronger, more capable, and more trustworthy. He becomes the anchor she can hold on to when the world feels chaotic. This is what she secretly longs for. Not a man who never feels anything, not a man who hides from her tears, but a man who can meet her in the depths without losing himself. Desire does not survive on routine alone. Comfort is good, stability is necessary, but a relationship that becomes too predictable loses its spark. Women may say they want safety and security, and they do, but they also want to feel excitement, surprise, and the thrill of being taken somewhere new. What they are really asking for is a man who can inject a sense of playfulness into life, who dares to disrupt the monotony without creating chaos. This is what playful risk looks like. The ability to keep things alive, to keep her guessing, just enough to keep her heart beating faster. Most men avoid risk because they fear rejection or failure. They fear doing something unexpected and getting it wrong, so they stick to the script, to what feels safe and familiar. Dinner at the same restaurant, the same routine in intimacy, the same phrases, the same evenings, the same order of events. At first this might feel comforting, but over time it deadens the connection. The spark that brought you together begins to fade, not because the love is gone, but because nothing new is being created. Women crave novelty, not constant drama, but moments that remind them they are alive. This could be as simple as planning a spontaneous trip or suggesting a new experience neither of you have tried before. It could be surprising her with a small, thoughtful gesture on a random day instead of waiting for her birthday or an anniversary. It could even be as subtle as changing the energy and intimacy, breaking out of a pattern and introducing a playful edge that catches her off guard in the best possible way. Playful risk is not about recklessness. It is not about gambling with the relationship or testing her limits for the sake of it. It is about creating moments of unpredictability that bring joy. Think of it like music. Too much repetition and the song becomes dull, too much chaos, and it becomes noise. The sweet spot is variation that keeps the listener engaged. The same is true for keeping desire alive. This willingness to take risks requires courage because it exposes you to the possibility of failure. If you plan something new, she might not like it. If you introduce a new idea, she might resist it. If you try a new way of expressing affection, she might laugh and not in the way you hoped. But that is the price of keeping things alive. The alternative is a slow drift into emotional and physical complacency, which over time is far more dangerous to a relationship than the occasional misstep. Women are drawn to men who have this sense of playful daring because it signals vitality. It tells her that you are still paying attention, that you still want to create something with her, that you have not gone to sleep in the relationship. It reassures her that you are capable of leading her into new experiences, which keeps her desire switched on. One of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction is that it thrives on tension, not negative tension, but the tension of anticipation. Playful risk builds this anticipation. It keeps her curious about what might happen next. And curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in intimacy. When she is curious, she is engaged. When she is engaged, she is open. It is worth remembering that this playfulness does not have to be grand or expensive. It can be as small as leaving a note somewhere she will find it, or sending her a message that teases rather than informs, or turning a dull evening into an impromptu dance in the kitchen. The point is not what you do, but that you are willing to do something unexpected, something that signals, I am awake, I am paying attention, and I am willing to risk a little embarrassment to make you smile. This kind of risk also requires self-trust. You cannot be playful if you are terrified of how you will be perceived. You have to be willing to be a little silly, to risk being misunderstood, to put yourself out there without knowing exactly how it will land. That vulnerability is part of what makes it powerful. She can feel that you are willing to risk discomfort for the sake of connection, and that makes her feel chosen and valued. In the end, playful risk is less about performance and more about mindset. It's about staying curious yourself about her, about life, about what is possible between you. It is about refusing to let the relationship fall asleep. When you do this, you keep the energy alive, and that energy is what allows love and desire to coexist rather than compete. There is something quietly magnetic about a man whose words and actions line up, a man who does not need to explain himself constantly because his life speaks for him. Integrity is one of the rarest qualities in the modern world, not because people are inherently dishonest, but because most people are terrified of the cost of standing firm. It is far easier to bend to pressure, to go along with whatever is expected, to keep the peace by abandoning what you know to be right. But every time a man compromises his integrity, he becomes a little smaller, and women can feel it. Women are not only watching what you say, they are watching what you do. If you claim to have principles but abandon them when they are inconvenient, if you promise something and fail to follow through, if you present yourself one way in public but live differently in private, they feel the inconsistency. And inconsistency is not attractive. It creates a subtle sense of distrust. She may not even be able to name it, but she senses that something is off, that the ground beneath her is less stable than it appears. On the other hand, a man who is rooted in his values commands respect without having to demand it. He does not need to shout to be heard or intimidate to be obeyed. His strength is quiet, but it is unmistakable. When he says yes, he means it. When he says no, he stands by it, even if it costs him something. This willingness to bear the cost of integrity is what makes him trustworthy. The temptation for many men is to mold themselves into whatever they think will win approval from women, from friends, from society. They become agreeable to the point of erasing themselves. At first, this might seem charming. It feels like cooperation, like kindness, but over time it begins to feel hollow because there is no core. Women do not want a man who is simply an echo of their own opinions. They want a man who has his own mind, who can challenge them when necessary, who can hold his ground even if it creates temporary tension. This does not mean becoming stubborn for the sake of it, or refusing to compromise in any situation. True integrity is not rigid or self-righteous. It is principled but flexible enough to respond to reality. It is about aligning action with belief, not about winning every argument. The man of integrity can admit when he is wrong, because admitting the truth is part of his code. He can change course when presented with better evidence, because truth matters more to him than pride. Women are deeply drawn to this kind of man because he is safe in the deepest sense, not safe in a way that avoids conflict at all costs, but safe because she knows where he stands. She knows that his behavior is not dictated by whoever shouts loudest or whoever offers him the most validation in the moment. She knows that he can be relied upon. This reliability does not sound romantic at first, but it is the foundation upon which real passion can be built. Strength, in this context, is not about muscle or aggression, but about moral backbone. It is about being able to withstand pressure from the culture, from peers, even from her, when that pressure would lead you away from what you know is right. This can be difficult because it risks disappointing people, even the people you love most. But a man who lives without this strength cannot be fully respected because he cannot be fully trusted. Living with integrity also creates a different kind of energy in the relationship, allows her to relax because she no longer has to question your motives. She does not have to constantly test you or wonder if you are hiding something. This clarity frees her to be softer, more open, because she is not bracing herself for betrayal. There will always be moments when integrity is tested. Perhaps it is the temptation to tell a small lie to avoid conflict. Perhaps it is the pressure to go along with something you do not believe in, because saying no would create friction. These are the moments that define you. Each time you choose to stand firm, you build a reputation with yourself. You prove to yourself that you are the kind of man who can be trusted, and that self-respect radiates outward. Women notice. The man of integrity is not perfect. He will make mistakes, but he owns them. He does not run from them or hide them. This accountability is itself a form of strength. because it shows that he does not need to protect a fragile ego. He can look reality in the eye, take responsibility, and make amends. That is far more powerful than the illusion of perfection. When you live this way, you become a man whose presence calms the room. You do not need to posture. You do not need to perform. You simply are. And that being aligned, principled, consistent is what women silently hope to find. It is rare, and because it is rare, it is precious. Strength alone is not enough to sustain a woman's desire. Power without softness can feel cold, distant, even threatening. What women secretly long for is a man who can hold both, who can be powerful when necessary, but chooses to be tender. This balance is rare, and because it is rare, it is profoundly attractive. Tenderness is not weakness. It is strength under control. It is the lion who chooses not to roar, the warrior who chooses to lower his sword and open his arms. For many men, tenderness feels risky. They fear that if they are gentle, if they show care or vulnerability, they will lose respect. They fear being seen as soft, as less masculine, so they hide that side of themselves, presenting only toughness, only stoicism, only the hard edges. But this one-dimensional masculinity leaves women cold. A man who cannot be tender is a man who cannot truly connect, because connection requires opening the heart. Tenderness is what allows a woman to feel cherished rather than simply possessed. It is what makes intimacy safe rather than transactional. A strong man who can hold her gently is telling her with his actions, "You are safe with me. My strength is not something you need to fear. I will not use it to hurt you." This reassurance awakens something deep in her, the ability to trust fully, to let her guard down completely. The irony is that it takes far more courage to be tender than to be hard. Anyone can put up a wall, bark orders, or keep their emotions buried. It takes real strength to let someone see your softer side, to risk rejection by showing care openly, to express affection without fear of being mocked. Tenderness is not passive. It is intentional. It is the decision to meet someone with gentleness, even when the world has taught you to stay guarded. This balance of strength and tenderness shows up in the smallest moments. It is in the way you touch her firm enough to make her feel held, soft enough to make her feel safe. It is in the way you speak confident enough to give direction, kind enough to make her feel heard. It is in the way you resolve conflict, willing to be strong when boundaries are crossed, willing to soften once safety has been re-established. Women are deeply intuitive when it comes to this balance. They can sense whether your strength is out of control, whether it might turn destructive, or whether it is something they can trust. They can also sense whether your tenderness comes from genuine care or from weakness and neediness. The former makes them feel cherished. The latter makes them feel burdened. The difference is that true tenderness flows from a man who is already secure in himself, who does not need her validation to feel whole. Many men assume that being strong means never showing emotion, never softening, never letting their guard down. But the men who are most admired by women and by other men are those who can control their power, the soldier who rescues rather than destroys, the father who disciplines firmly but hugs warmly, the partner who can be protective in danger but gentle in love. This is not a contradiction, it is a harmony. Tenderness is also what keeps love alive over the long term. Desire may flare up in moments of excitement or passion, but it is tenderness that builds trust and devotion. It is what turns attraction into attachment, what makes her feel not just desired but valued. Without tenderness, relationships become brittle. They may survive for a time on duty or on physical connection, but they lack depth. With tenderness, love becomes something she can rest in. Learning to embody this balance requires practice. It may mean confronting the parts of yourself that are afraid to be seen. It may mean learning to regulate your emotions so you do not lash out in anger. It may mean softening your tone when your instinct is to shut down. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs that you have mastered yourself enough to offer her the gift of your gentleness. When a man learns this art, he becomes unforgettable. Women remember the men who made them feel both thrilled and safe, both wanted and protected, both desired and deeply respected. That is the power of strength, mixed with tenderness, it makes her feel alive without ever making her feel unsafe.